What's going on, y'all? It is Gamers Goon here today, and as you can see, we have the first round mock lined and loaded. I did end up paying for the PFF Plus or whatever it's going on, so I got to read a little bit in depth about some of the prospects that I was interested in. Got to look a little bit more at each and every one of the players that I'm definitely going to be paying attention to in this draft this season. Guys like Sidney Brown, Chase Brown, Illinois players like that. Got to read up a little bit on my boy Devon Witherspoon. Got to read up on my boy a little bit Christian Gonzalez. So we definitely were able to read up a little bit about some people. You got to see guys like Jalen Carter, and I'll tell you here, especially now since we have the PFF Plus, that his comp is Kawan Short. So I mean, like Bryce Young, got Deshaun Watson comps, um, Will Anderson. I didn't really look in depth on Randy Gregory. That's right. But guys like Tyree Wilson, I believe his comp was like Jason Pierre-Paul. Very good early in his career, Jason Pierre-Paul was. So um, definitely was interesting getting to read some of that heading into this. But I did want to also let you all know, obviously the draft is fast approaching. You're probably seeing this Wednesday. And last year I did do the live stream, live mock. I will still be doing the live mock. I will update you all how that goes. However, it will not be live streamed because unfortunately I have class for an hour. So draft starts at 5. I have class until 6. So for an hour, I will still be watching the draft because I'm not going to be paying attention to class. I can't pay attention on draft day, but I obviously can't skip. But then later in the night, I also have a soccer game that I have to go to. So while I will keep up to date with the draft, I won't be able to live stream. But I will probably be recording a video around the same time, around 10 o'clock time, 10:30, 11 o'clock, whenever I get home from that soccer game. But let's get right into it. Number one, Panthers. This has been an absolute confusing thing. I've filmed this video twice, and you haven't seen either of those videos. And that's simply because things have changed rapidly. I recorded one on Sunday, and Aaron Rodgers got traded on Monday. I recorded one yesterday and was going to upload it today, and then early this morning, when I was still at class, because I was going through classes, and then after class I was ready to upload, and we got notifications that Will Levis is seemingly going to be really expected to go number one. Vegas is starting to move up his odds. Apparently, there was a Redditor that said that Will Levis is telling people close to him that he will be a Carolina Panther and that he's going first in the draft. However, I can't confirm whether or not that's true. Um, it's tough with situations like this. It really is because, I mean, you have situations like last year that we all thought it could be smoke and mirrors, and then Trayvon Walker went number one. We thought surely he wasn't going number one. Aiden Hutchinson was a lock, and it ended up being actually Trayvon Walker. So, I mean, sometimes it's not all smoke and mirrors. I think the obvious pick here for the Panthers is Bryce Young. I really do. CJ Stroud, somebody I really like. If I was picking in this spot, if I was the Panthers, I would take CJ Stroud. I understand the concerns of his ceiling might not necessarily be as high as any of the other top guys, but I think your floor is much more established, and I don't think that his ceiling is all that low. I really don't. I think CJ Stroud, you know what you're getting. He's the safe bet at that quarterback position. He's the safe option. If you're a team in the top taking a quarterback, you're not going to get fired for taking CJ Stroud. I don't see there being much bust potential with him. I get it. He's an Ohio State quarterback. I do get that. But I don't see much bust potential with him. The guy with Bryce Young, yeah, you can argue maybe some bust potential there, a little bit undersized. You don't know necessarily how that's going to translate. Is that going to translate like somebody like Kyler Murray, or is that going to translate to a situation maybe even worse than Kyler Murray? And we've seen Kyler Murray with his struggles staying healthy. Is that something Bryce Young's going to have to concern himself with? So maybe he's not the surefire option at one. Personally, I think he is the most talented. But if I was picking one, I'd still take C.J. Stroud, just the combine, not the combine specifically, but the combination of his size, his athleticism, his field, or what he's done on the field. I don't think he's that far behind Bryce Young with his body of work. Really, I don't. And I really do view him as a safe option. I get that he might not have the potential top 5 quarterback in the league potential. I could see him very well being a long-time starter. They compared him to Ryan Tannehill, which I think is very disrespectful in my opinion. Nothing against Ryan Tannehill, but I do think C.J. Stroud could be a little bit better than that. I do think C.J. Stroud could be a couple-time Pro Bowler. But sometimes these smoke and mirrors really are. Sometimes when there's smoke, there's a fire, and I wouldn't be surprised if Bryce Young's not the option because he's small. You don't want to really risk yourself with those potential injury concerns that could arise. I get it. I really do. C.J. Stroud didn't have great S2 testing. He was in the 18th percentile. That's terrible. Out of these 4, he was the lowest by a long shot. Anthony Richardson was the second lowest at 79. He was about 61 percentiles worse than Anthony Richardson. So I think when there's smoke, there's a fire. I don't like the fact that Will Levis goes 1. I don't think he is the best player in this draft. I told you all on my big board he's around the 25th best player in this class for me. I don't necessarily think he is a lock in as in first round talent. He's kind of in that middle territory of he could either be first or second round talent, but he has the tools to be good. We haven't seen that in action since not last year, but the year before last when he still had Wan'Dale Robinson, he still had his offensive line. It's going to be an interesting spot with Will Levis, very risky, but I think when there's smoke, there's a fire. Another team now on the board is the Texans, another QB needy team, and I do think, however, I know a lot of people are really pushing this idea that it's Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson here. I've seen a lot of people say Tyree Wilson. I've seen a lot of people say Will Anderson. The closer we get to draft day, the less certain it is that this is a QB. I get it. I really do get it. But I think the edge rushers there at 12 and every other position really, I don't know if you can get, without trading back up, one of these quarterbacks. I really don't. I really don't. And I think, especially now that Will Levis is the guy off the board, and you still more than likely have your top 2 options in Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, I do think that with the Texans having their choice between the 2 quarterbacks that they would have had the choice at 1, I do think they would take Bryce Young here. Shades of Deshaun Watson is what it's going to say here when we go to his analysis. I don't agree with that, but they say shades of Deshaun Watson. Sometimes when there's shades of him, he's still going to go to the Texans. Hopefully not the shades of Deshaun Watson that are negative for Deshaun Watson's character. We got the Cardinals now. I think the Cardinals definitely are going to be trading this down to a team like the Colts. The Colts, it makes all the sense in the world for them to trade down. It really does. Or trade up. I know they're moving up 1 spot, but you got teams down the line. Falcons, I don't think are a quarterback team. I know it said it's a big need there. But I wouldn't be shocked if they do go quarterback. Same thing with the Raiders there. And even a team down the line a little bit like the Packers. Not really sure on their quarterback future if they are solidified with Jordan Love, or a team like the Titans, obviously. They might not be sold on Malik Willis. A lot of people said they might not be sold on him. So I think this will end up being a trade. I don't know what that specific deal would be. But let's just, for the sake of this, just throw something out there like they're not going to be interested, but we're just going to, it doesn't matter. They're going to work it all out. We're just going to force the trades. The Colts, though, I think they do at least move up 1 here and get C.J. Stroud. I think it's hard to say that this quarterback run's going to happen. It really is, because this could all be deviated here with the Texans. I really don't know if the Texans are going to go quarterback. They might wait till 12 when they have maybe an option at Anthony Richardson, or maybe they're comfortable taking somebody like a Hendon Hooker at 12. I don't know. It's going to be a really interesting draft. Cardinals now on the clock. I think the Cardinals are a team. Obviously, I think they were going Will Anderson at 3. Now that he's here at 4, I think it's still a given. I think he's the best player in the class. Number 5, we have the Seahawks on the clock. Jalen Carter's tempting. He really is tempting. Unfortunately, though, for Jalen Carter, I do think that a little bit cleaner of a prospect here in Tyree Wilson. His average draft pick's really gone down. He was 10 earlier, but his average draft pick's really gone down. Obviously, they've updated the rankings a little bit. Nolan Smith wasn't 13th. He was like in the mid-20s. But Tyree Wilson, I still think, is a lock pretty early on. Then we get to the Lions. The Lions now, I think they are a corner team, but it's a guy like Jalen Carter being there, very tempting, very, very tempting for them. But corner, sitting there, you could get Gonzalez or Witherspoon, or do you help your secondary a little bit more, and you go Jalen Carter, who's still sitting there, still in need on their defensive line. It's hard to pass up Jalen Carter. I wouldn't be shocked if they did take Jalen Carter. I think that's probably the right decision, but I don't think they'll do that. I think they probably go with a guy that profiles a little bit more to be their guy rather than Christian Gonzalez. Christian Gonzalez, I do think, profiles to be a little bit better than Devon Witherspoon when it comes to translating in the NFL. Devon Witherspoon a little bit undersized, but he's a gritty defensive back, throws his body around like nobody else. One of the hardest hitters in all football last year in college. In my opinion, Devon Witherspoon is the best corner in this class, but I do see a lot of teams probably having Christian Gonzalez fitting on that board over him just because the size, the length, the speed, everything combined with Christian Gonzalez is there. Where Devon Witherspoon, he has some of it. He's a really good corner, but he doesn't have the size. So, I mean, it's to pick your poison. It really is. But I still think a gritty player like Devon Witherspoon would fit like a glove in a back or in a secondary that already has an Illinois safety in Kirby Joseph, who also had a really good year last year. The Raiders, I would love for this to be Jalen Carter. I really would. But that would be so bad. The Raiders are not good when it comes to managing players. A guy with Jalen Carter's character concerns, and I know everybody's saying character concerns. I don't really think it's that bad of character concerns for Jalen Carter, necessarily. Obviously, the racing incident, yeah. I still think he'll be a good player. I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to warrant him missing time for playing or for whatever his legal reasons or anything like that. This is an interesting spot. It really is. Do we just have Anthony Richardson go here? I think we could. I really do think we could. But a team that has Jimmy Garoppolo sitting in the back burner, they could wait till next year in the Caleb Williams class if things go wrong. I think Jalen Carter makes the most sense here for them. I really do. I don't love the fact that he's going to the Raiders, a team that's already shown that they can definitely have problems when it comes to players getting into trouble. Henry Ruggs comes to mind. I think Nate Hobbs might have had something, a DUI or something like that at one point. Obviously, there's a lot of people that have really had PR nightmares when they were on the Raiders, and I don't know if Jalen Carter would necessarily fit well into that environment, but I do think with Anthony Richardson being the only quarterback on the board, I don't necessarily think that the Raiders would be in love with him. I do think he really profiles to be a very gadgety quarterback that you could potentially turn into a Josh Allen type. It'll tell you that he's a Josh Allen type there, but it's going to be a work in process. I mean, it definitely could make sense with Jimmy Garoppolo there because you would have a bunch of time to develop Anthony Richardson and he'd be able to work out there. But Jalen Carter being on the board, at least for me, would be a little bit too hard to pass up on, especially when you got a guy like Hendon Hooker in the second round potentially. The Falcons now, I think this is a trade down spot, prime trade down spot. Packers is interesting. It really is. I don't think many people think that the Packers are necessarily working on this QB class. And I think the Titans definitely are potential for Anthony Richardson as well, because I don't necessarily think they're sold on Malik Willis. And I don't necessarily see anybody blowing the smoke here with the Packers drafting a quarterback. Obviously, they took Jordan Love. Jordan Love hasn't played much, obviously, playing behind Aaron Rodgers. I think a team like Green Bay could trade up. They just helped their draft capital. They got some stuff to spend. They could trade up, and they could either go there. Like, if they wanted to trade up and get Jalen Carter, they could, if Jalen Carter's on the board. If they want to trade up and they want to go get a receiver to help out Jordan Love, like Jackson Smith-Njigba, they could. Or they could sit at 13 and potentially be the second or third team to go receiver. But I do really think there's a potential here still at quarterback. And you might be looking at me, no, they're not going quarterback. No, they're not going quarterback. They just traded Aaron Rodgers. I have not seen much out of Jordan Love. I know they said they're going to go with him. Them saying they're going to go with Jordan Love means there's a year of development there for Anthony Richardson. I'm taking Anthony Richardson there. I know many people probably don't have that being the case. We can look at Anthony Richardson here. His trends, Colts, Raiders, Seahawks. That's it. It's tricky. It really is tricky. I do think Anthony Richardson stays in the top 10. And a team like the Packers, who could be a sneaky quarterback team, would be the teams to trade up for him. A team like the Titans also could be a sneaky quarterback team that could trade up for him. Heck, even a team like the Falcons could just sit and pick and take Anthony Richardson. And it very well could be that he goes here at 7. But we don't have him going there. The Bears. I think the Bears are interesting as well. Obviously, you see a lot of draft capital here in the next 2 drafts, and even 3 drafts, really. They got an extra second. I don't think the Bears necessarily are committed here. I think the Bears are definitely, especially the way Ryan Poles has worked his magic, he's been willing to really just deal picks around, right? And you're looking here at a draft board that top O linemen's on the board. They could sit and pick, take Paris Johnson. Top receivers on the board. Somebody might want a Jackson Smith-Njigba. Christian Gonzalez still on the board. Very enticing for some of these corner needy teams down there. A team that I think is very corner needy, and I don't necessarily know if they're going to be the team to trade up. I don't know why I went to corners. They're not going to put them on here, yeah, but I do think that the Commanders are going to be a team to watch out for when it comes to the corners. Steelers, obviously they come to mind. They have the Bears pick, but I think you might be a little bit more inclined to trade with somebody a little bit earlier in the second or in that first round. And ultimately, something like that happens. The Bears are able to pick up more draft capital. I do think the Bears will trade down. If they don't trade down, I fully believe it's going to be Paris Johnson. But we're gonna sit and pick there. And now the Commanders are now up, and I do think they go up, and they would take Christian Gonzalez. Christian Gonzalez, too good of a player to leave out of the top 10. Team like the Eagles could go corner. I don't think it would be at 10. I think it would be more likely at their 30th pick than it would be here at 10, but could be a team that would be sneaky. This is another team. This is another spot, very tricky to pick. I've seen a lot of Bijan Robinson here. I could see them going receiver here. I'm going to stick and pick here, and I'm going to go Peter Skoronski. Peter Skoronski has the profile a little bit. I don't know how. Are they going to mention anything in here? Yeah, he played primarily on that left side at tackle, but he is somebody that you can pretty much use, like, yeah. That's all you really need to know. You can move him almost anywhere on the offensive line. I've heard some people suggest maybe play him at center. Big need there in Philadelphia. You could definitely play him at guard, obviously, being a little bit shorter armed. Definitely could try him out at the guard on that left or the right side. I don't think it would be that big of an adjustment for a guy like Peter Skronsky, very versatile kid there at Northwestern. Titans now on the clock. Definitely a team that I thought could be quarterback needy. But Todd Corners off the board. I think this is going to be an interesting spot. I think this does go O-line. Obviously, they did lose their guard in Nate Davis. And they might not necessarily need a guy like Paris Johnson to play left tackle. Do they still have? I'm not sure if they still have him. And I don't have my phone on me because it's charging. But they still had that one tackle, the white kid. What was his name? Lawan. I don't know if he played left tackle, but the true left tackle here in Paris Johnson. You could definitely try to move him around. The same thing with Penei Sewell coming out of college. But I think Paris Johnson's a really good pick. I really like his game. I think he's really, really good. I wouldn't be mad if the Bears took him. To me, he still is the top offensive lineman on the board. I do know that I had Peter Skronsky going first, just because he's a little bit more versatile. I do think that a team that could be using an offensive lineman, not necessarily a tackle, would be a little bit more interested there in Skronsky than they would Johnson. But I do profile Johnson more as a tackle in the NFL, and I do think he'd be really successful there. Texans now on the clock. Last time they went Bryce Young. I think this time they go get Bryce Young a weapon. They go get him a weapon. I know that we could have talked edge there at 2. I don't think they necessarily care. They got a lot of picks if we want to look at their draft. They got 33, they got 65. They got a lot of picks in the top 75. There's going to be some edge rushers where it's like a Tuli Peloto, whether it's B.J. Ojulari there in that second round, whether it's Keon White. There's going to be options. Receiver in that second round, I'm not as in love with as I am the edge rusher class. I think here at 12, you probably want to go your receiver. Jack Smith-Njigba, I think that's where he starts to come out. And we get to the Falcons. They're once again tricky quarterback team. I don't think receivers in play. Edge rusher definitely is. I think if they do go edge rusher, I kind of view Myles Murphy more as their fit. Could be a guy like Lucas Van Ness add a power rushing element to their team, but I do view Myles Murphy a little bit more of a fit there in their scheme. Patriots now, they're on the clock. And the Patriots, they also could go O-line. I don't necessarily think that is the case, though. Edge, definitely in play. Receiver could be a sneaky pick. Corner could be a sneaky pick. But I think I'm going to have them take a guy like Lucas Van Ness. Really feels like a Patriots type of guy. I said the same thing about the Packers. I could see either of those teams really taking him. He just really fits the profile of what Bill Belichick's looking for. He likes those strong pass rushers, kind of like what Chase Winovich brought to the table. Let's see if Lucas Van Ness, who his NFL comp was. I'm actually interested. Justin Smith, that's a really good comp. If you can get a Justin Smith type of edge out of New England, that's pretty good. Jets, they traded down. They obviously gave up some draft capital a little bit, and they went out and got Aaron Rodgers. I do think with them going to get Aaron Rodgers, they go definitely offense. I do think that they will be the ones that break the trend of Aaron Rodgers not getting what he wants. To me, if you got to go get him on an offensive lineman, you could argue that they definitely have tackles that can play like Mekhi Becton, but their tackles really struggle to stay on the field. I think a guy like Broderick Jones, you might be able to profile a little bit on the guards spot at the early point of the season and really move him back out to tackle if your tackles can't finish the season healthy. Bears at 16 now. I think this is a spot that could be tricky, especially now with the top O lineman off the board. I don't think necessarily Darnell Wright is a given. I do think he could be the answer here. Obviously, Bijan Robinson, somebody that's been associated a little bit with the Bears. I don't know how much they're going to tell. Yeah, he's not really on here associated with the Bears, but some people have thought maybe he might go to the Bears. Bears could obviously need a running back after losing David Montgomery. And I think corner definitely is in play. You might be like, they just drafted corner last year. Yeah, Kyler Gordon is going to be a slot. So now you have Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon in the slot. You need another corner for the outside on the opposite side of Jalen Johnson. And a guy like Jordy Porter could be very tempting. Obviously, you got a Penn State duo that would be brewing there with Joey Porter and Jaquan Brisker now. Very interesting. I would love to see Joey Porter be the pick. But I think personally, yeah, you got some concerns maybe at that right tackle position. Maybe this is Darnell Wright. But I do think you might be able to get somebody here in that second round, like a DeJuan Jones or a Cody Mao or even Matthew Bergeron, who I still think would be pretty solid value. Whereas I don't think you're going to get a better player here than Nolan Smith. I really don't. If Nolan Smith's off the board, I would take Darnell Wright. I would. But with Nolan Smith on the board, this kid just, everything about him screams like he's going to work out. He didn't play many games last year, did get hurt, but the year before had 7 sacks. This kid has a combine to fall in love with, very quick player, 3-4 outside linebacker. That's exactly what you need. Especially in a Chicago team that really lacks outside linebacking play. Their inside linebackers are great. Their outside linebackers, not so much. But he can improve sides. Yeah, I'm not really concerned about that. Analysis, they're going to compare him to Baron Browning. We don't really use power rushing moves. We don't. Here's my thing. You need somebody to create a problem in that backfield. And Bears last year were led in sacks by Eddie Jackson. You need another weapon there to rush the quarterback. A fast, twitchy outside linebacker like Nolan Smith, you can play on the line a little bit. I think you could definitely make an argument to take him here. Then the Steelers. I was tempted to take Joey Porter. Obviously, I probably would have took Darnell Wright over Joey Porter. But Joey Porter being here makes too much sense. Very needy team there in the secondary. Joey Porter makes perfect sense. Stays in the state already. Lions, they're going to be kicking themselves just a little bit. I think that they might double dip on corner if Joey Porter was there, but I don't think it's that big of a deal because you do get Kalijah Kancey here. You might even still get a Nolan Smith at this spot and maybe even a Lucas Van Ness. But it's interesting here. I don't know if Kalijah Kancey's a lock necessarily. I think this still could be tight end, and that would be Dalton Kincaid. I do think Dalton Kincaid would be the first one to go, but I'm going to stick with the defensive lineman there and Kalijah Kancey, something they could prove a little bit on. The Buccaneers, I think this is a trade down spot, and I think they would probably trade down with a team like the Ravens, who would be moving up for a receiver. And their receiver of their choice would be Quentin Johnston. Out, that is not receiver. The receiver of their choice would be Quentin Johnston out of TCU. I do think he's going to end up going pretty much in this range. Ravens, I think they could use a threat like Quentin Johnston. Big body receiver, fast, very good deep threat there. Has a little bit of development to do in the NFL, but I think he'd be a very wrong not to take a guy like him. Seahawks now, another team that I've seen could go receiver. Don't think they will, especially with what they went at 5. They went Tyree. Interior offensive line here definitely is in play. And I think if you're doing that, you're really looking at O'Cyrus Torrence. Somebody that I think will end up being a first-round pick. He kind of flirts in that range of maybe mid to late first round. He might even slide to second round. He's kind of that unknown territory, but I do think O'Cyrus Torrence fits right here. A team that needs a little bit of interior offensive line help, I think a guy like O'Cyrus Torrence makes perfect sense. Team that definitely has been slotted receiver for a long time. I'm not going to change that trend. It's a jump ball between Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison. I like Zay Flowers more. They might like Jordan Addison more. Jordan Addison person or not well. He's from the area, already from Southern California. Well, I'm not even sure if he's from the area, but he played in the area. So maybe they got a little bit up more close and personal with him. But I still think it's going to be Zay Flowers. Buccaneers. Buccaneers now on the clock. This is a sneaky spot for Bijan Robinson, I think. Obviously Leonard Fournette's gone. I could see him. I could see Bijan going here, but another team. I think they probably, especially with Darnell Wright still sitting on the board, they probably go him. And Tristan Wirfs and Darnell Wright, I don't even want to think about having to play that offensive line. The Vikings. The Vikings are up. Obviously, the only receiver really left is Jordan Addison. Could be an interesting pair with Justin Jefferson, something I think they would definitely consider. Kalijah Kancey makes it here. Could be a really solid pick for them. I think corner, definitely with Deonte Banks still on the board, is definitely a pick. And with the guys on the board, I think Deonte Banks would be the answer here. Jaguars, I've had them going the same guy for a long time. Brian Branch, I don't see how Brian Branch is going to continue to slide. It's really hard for me to have Brian Branch slide because I think he's a top 10 player, but I don't really know who's going to value the safeties. And a team like the Jaguars, who could use help in their secondary period, could definitely value Brian Branch. And I really hope Brian Branch is a first-round pick because I think he's a really good player. I honestly hope this mock draft is wrong, and I hope he's a lot higher, but I just really don't have a good idea of really where Brian Branch is going to fall. We can look a little bit at Brian Branch here in his trends, and yeah, pretty much the Jaguars, Buccaneers, Packers. So they're all kind of he's kind of floating in that middle to back into that first round. I'm not really sure if that Packers pick is the second round Packers pick or the first round Packers pick, but I would assume the Tampa Bay is also very similar in that area. Giants, another team I think definitely could flirt around with Brian Branch if he's there. He's not, but there is a guy here that is named Jordan Addison. Definitely a team that has missed on receivers in the past. I think a guy like Jordan Addison would give them a little bit more hope. Cowboys now on the clock. I think everybody knows exactly why Bijan Robinson is going there. Zeke's gone, already in Texas. I think Bijan Robinson is going to be an immediate guy, immediately going to be a top 10 running back in the league, somebody that's really going to translate right away. Similar to as Breece Hall did last year, he came in ready to go, firing in all cylinders. Unfortunately, Breece Hall had his injury, but I do think Bijan Robinson is the kind of running back that is immediately going to win the starting job and immediately cause impact and immediately be a fantasy threat for any team. The Bills are now on the clock. Very interesting spot here for the Bills. I do think that they're kind of hoping Deonte Banks makes it. Deonte Banks not there. This could be a little bit of a tricky spot. It could be a little bit of Emmanuel Forbes territory. It could be Cam Smith territory. Could even be Kelee Ringo territory. But I think we've seen linebackers drafted in a lot of the last classes, and I really think that trend's going to continue with somebody. I'm just not sure who that team would be. And a guy like Jack Campbell makes sense. A guy like Drew Sanders definitely makes sense. When you look at Drew Sanders, 22, I believe Jack Campbell is around the same age, a little bit, 22-ish. So it's really your pick of poison. I know Dayon Henley's a little bit older. Trenton Simpson's also interesting. Could be a little bit of a reach option, a little bit younger. But either way, I think that they're definitely in play for linebacker. I think if they go linebacker, it would be somebody like Drew Sanders. We're going to have Drew Sanders go there. I haven't mocked him in first rounds. I'm going to mock him here now. I mean, it's too easy, right? It's too easy. Some of the top defensive linemen are still on the board, like Mazi Smith and Brian Brise. But I think with Dalton Kincaid still there and Michael Mayer still there, it's really hard to pass up on one of those guys. And if you have a preference, I would take Dalton Kincaid. We get to the Saints now. Saints, another team that could use offensive linemen. Maybe you could hope for Antoine Harrison here to be able to play a little bit guard. Don't know if he can. Swing tackle, pretty much. You can play him on both sides of the line. You got a little bit of flexibility. Maybe you don't want that. Maybe you do want your true interior offensive lineman. Maybe a guy like John Michael Schmitz who can play center, probably best center in the class. Makes sense. Corner could be a play here. Guy like Manuel Forbes still on the board. Cam Smith still on the board. DJ Turner, Tyreek Stevenson, DJ Turner, Keely Ringo. It's really hard for me to believe Keely Ringo won't make it out of the first round. I really think he is a first round player when at his best. I don't necessarily think he's always at his best. That's why he's not as high on my big board, but I do think Keely Ringo is a really good player still. Keely Ringo there. I find it hard to believe he's going to make it out of the first round. The Eagles, what do we have them do? We have them go Skoronski. I think this is probably an edge spot now. I thought definitely they could toy around with edge there at 10. And a guy like Will McDonald, somebody that I could see going a little bit earlier than this, still on the board, makes perfect sense. Even a sneaky Keon White could make some sense there. But I think this is probably Will McDonald territory. Then we get to the Chiefs, last pick of the first round, last pick of this mock draft. He's on the board for a reason. A lot of teams passed up on him, just like Karlaftis last year. I do know they rank Mozzie Smith better. To me, it's Bryan Bresee. I think this is probably where he goes. Can't leave him on the board too much longer. Fits the profile there. Really helps him out. Obviously, they lost Frank Clark, so it's really helping out their defensive line. So while we might not all agree that this is going to necessarily happen, I think this is fairly representative of how the draft works, right? We're not necessarily, especially nowadays with like Trayvon Walker last year, I think a Will Levis situation is not all that far-fetched at 1. Best player available probably goes at 2 at that case then. Then you got a team that would want to trade up just to secure their guy like them, like the Colts. Then you got another guy. Then you got another guy that was going to be the lock. And then you got the character concern guy. Then you got a guy that's really high potential. Then you got another team trading up for a best player available situation. I mean, this feels like an accurate draft. This feels like something that could happen. You look at this, love the fit there with Lucas Van Ness. Love the fit there with Broderick Jones. Love the fit there with Nolan Smith. I'm actually wearing the Roquan Smith jersey. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I'm wearing the Roquan jersey. Joey Porter makes perfect sense. Kalijah Cansey. Quentin Johnston, something I could definitely see happening. Cyrus Torrence really has been linked a lot with that Seahawks team. I think the Chargers are really hard to pick. I don't know which receiver they prefer, but they're going receiver nonetheless. Darnell Wright kind of feels like he might even be higher than this. Probably will be when it's all said and done, but I wouldn't be shocked if one of the offensive linemen were to slide a little, if it would be Darnell Wright. Somebody that kind of late jumped up boards. Somebody that was kind of viewed as that second round pick, but ended up kind of jumping to that first round category. But that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you all enjoy the draft tomorrow.